Thought that one. Hello, everyone. Hello, hello. For those who are watching the replay, welcome to Psychology Eats again. I am doing a live today, tonight. As I mentioned before, I will be going live every night for the month of July. Well, let me give people time to come in here before I start yapping. Before I get into, I don't know if y'all can hear this music. My neighbors is having a whole party. They're having a party, fireworks, and the whole nine. Hi, AO. Hello, hello, hello. I'm doing nightly videos for the month of July. This July is National Awareness Month for Black and Indigenous people. And so I'm hosting on my channel a nightly review of the subject. And so I will be discussing different topics. Hold on, let me turn this down. Okay. So I'll be discussing, oh, thank you, AO, thank you. Tonight I'm discussing, what's my title? Secrets Kill. Secrets Kill. And this is, I'm not going to say special to Black families, but there's an unwritten rule among Black households and an unwritten slogan that we have heard, most of us have heard. Some of us, maybe that wasn't something you heard, but basically what happens in the house stays in the house. What happens in this house stays in this house. So I'm going to talk about the history of that saying and why it was important that Black moms and dads taught that to children. We're going to talk about why it even started and why it's good and it's bad. It's good and it can be bad if there is abuse or some like unhealthy behaviors happening within the household. So that's what I'm going to be talking about tonight. What happens in the house stays in the house. So hopefully, we'll get a few more people in here, but if we don't, people will go back and watch the video. And hopefully YouTube will throw some of my videos into the algorithm, and people who would not normally find me would be able to find my videos on this important topic throughout the month, which is bringing awareness to mental health for the month of July. Go let him know you're here. Bringing awareness to, excuse me, somebody just came in. Hi, Linda. So bringing awareness to, I'm in the business, bringing awareness to mental health for Black people and Indigenous people for the month of July. So let's talk about how this whole saying started from what I'm thinking, why I think this saying started. What happens in the house stays in the house. So if we go all the way back, and I think this kind of started, if we go back to slavery. We go back to slavery. And so imagine, you're in this situation as a captured slave person, and you're in bondage, and now they start to form these families that really were put together by the slave owner, right? So the slave owner basically said, you can have John and Mary, you're a couple now, go and make some kids, and now we're going to make your family, because they couldn't become partners unless the slave owner said they could. And so as they began to build these families, there were certain things that they had to keep secret in order to survive. And so I believe that's where it started. Because, kids just talk. So I'm sure even the little kids of during the time of slavery were like any other little kids. And so they would talk about, things that maybe they weren't supposed to report or say to the slave owners. And so it started there. Or not even to tell the people in the cabin next to you, because let's say you told the people in the cabin next to you, oh, my mom, we had fresh yams yesterday for dinner. And then the other slaves, like, where you get yams from? And then they run and tell the slave owner, she had yams. So that could turn into you losing your family, being separated, your children being taken away. And so the slave at that time learned very early that the little secrets and things that they had to keep it to themselves. And they had to teach the children to do the same thing. You cannot tell anybody what has happened. Hi, Princess. You cannot tell anybody any of these secrets or things that are happening within our family, because if you do and you tell the wrong person, we can be killed. We can straight up be killed. We can be killed. Daddy could be sold off. Mama can be sold off. The children can be sold off. And so that is where I believe that whole notion of what happens in this house stays in this house. It was a way of being able to pass information, but it had to be a secret. All right, so we get through slavery, and we still have this unspoken and spoken rule among Black families. What happens in the house stays in the house. So now we get to emancipation and Jim Crow. So we're free, but we're not really free. And so we learned that we had to keep secrets then too. And we had to teach our children to keep secrets. So if Black people weren't legally able to read or write, if you learned that skill, you had to keep it a secret. And you had to teach your children to keep it a secret. When Black people were figuring out a way to escape, right? So they were escaping the South. And so you had to prepare your children, like, we're going to be escaping, but you can't tell nobody. What happens in this house stays in this house. That was critical for their survival. Imagine I know me as a little kid. Now I'm out, I'm playing with Master's daughter, and Master's daughter is over there yapping, and I'm starting to play too. And I say, that's okay, because me and my family, we escape. We going up north to my cousins. And now little Susie gonna run and tell her father that we're in the middle of trying to escape the plantation. Now, what you think gonna happen to Daddy and Mama and me? All three of us gonna get our ass kicked, and then they're gonna sell off Mama. So this is the foundation of what stays in the house, what happens in the house stays in the house. Okay, family secrets. Family secrets. So I'm hoping that that is clearing up kind of where this all started. And it's not just for Black folks. Other cultures do the same thing. Other cultures do the same thing. You know, they ain't out here telling their business. So now where we are today, what happens in the house stays in the house has a negative connotation because, especially for those of us sometimes in the mental health, we feel like, or we believe, oh, it must be a family secret. Oh, it must be abuse. The kids scared to talk. The kids won't say anything that happened in their family. Oh, it got to be a secret. That's not always true. That is not always true. And for any of you mental health workers who might be listening to this, social workers, CPS workers, that is where understanding Black culture comes in. Understanding that just because a child says to you, I can't tell you that my mom told me don't tell her business. My mom said whatever happens in her house stays in her house, right? I've heard kids have told me that, you know, little Black kids have told me that, even though their mom had said to them, you're going to see a counselor, you can talk to the counselor. They still have that. If I say, oh, how was your weekend? Don't ask me. My mommy told me don't tell none of her business. I've heard that from 5-year-olds. So they had already been indoctrinated with that. What happens in the house stays in the house. And for me, it doesn't automatically mean that they have been abused. It doesn't mean that. Can it mean that? Yes. But as a skilled clinician, I'm speaking to clinicians, you should be able to get to the truth without making assumptions. Because it's easy to get stuff out of kids. It really is. Princess, that was me. And my mom and dad never was on that, like, you better not tell my business, because it was almost like an unwritten rule. Like, maybe they did say it because I knew not to talk about the business. But my parents was good too. They didn't let us as children know the business. So I didn't have no business to tell. But I know that, let's say I got a spanking, because I would get a spanking. I'm going to say I got a spanking at least every 2 weeks. I know one time I think my sister told somebody I got a spanking or something like that. And that's when I remember my mom, like, you don't talk about what happens in this house. Because I think my sister like told somebody that I got a spanking. And so then I went home, was like, she told me I got a spanking, I got a beating or whatever. He left his key. Let's leave his keys in. So, yeah. So then I think it was that unwritten rule that I knew not to tell family business. Okay. So where we are today is that when kids say that, it sends for us, it can send a red flag that maybe something has happened. And so let's talk about sometimes things are happening, right? Sometimes things are happening. Bad things are happening within a household. And everyone's keeping the secret. The children are keeping the secret. The adults are keeping the secret. It's a secret. And the secret could be sexual abuse, physical abuse, mental abuse, and the children are told not to tell. You better not tell. They're threatened. And it goes right back to the same threats, really, like that the slave owner used 400 years ago by telling the children, if you tell, you're going to be taken away, or your mom is going to be taken away. So it's the same mentality used on Black people back then is used on maybe our children today who are in abusive situations where they're being told what stays in this house, what happens in this house stays in this house. And I think we got to be careful how we send that message to children. There's a book called What Happens in This House Stays in This House, and the author of the book was abused, and she didn't tell anybody because there had been that message sent to her by her mother not to talk about anything that was happening in the house, and so she kept the secret. So we got to be careful because we know that most abuse, sexual abuse to children, is done by somebody that they know, that they are familiar with, their cousin, their uncle, their mom's friend, the boyfriend. 90% of the time, sexual abuse is done by somebody that the victim knows, right? And so if you told your child, don't talk about what happens in my house, then even when something as bad like that is happening, who are they going to tell? Because they've already got that in their head. But you as the mother, you're not thinking that I'm blocking them from telling something like that. I'm just blocking them from telling people that we got a new TV or my boyfriend made me cry or whatever. So as a parent, you got to be clear with your kids. Like, no, I don't want you telling everything that's going on in my house. But if anybody is hurting you, first of all, you got to tell me. You don't want to tell me, you tell grandma, you tell auntie, you tell your teacher. I'm giving you permission to tell if somebody is hurting you, period. Now, that don't mean I want you to tell every time I spank your hiney. But if somebody is touching you inappropriately, you need to tell. You got to tell. You got to tell. I've worked with so many victims. Maybe I start working when they're like 30. And from 7 to 18, they've been sexually molested by an uncle or a boyfriend of the mother or whatever. And that's not my first question, but it's always in my head. What stopped you from telling? What got in your way? What did he say? How did he keep you to keep this secret? And oftentimes it went back to what happens in this house stays in this house. If you tell, they're going to put me in jail. You're going to go in foster care. Your mom might go to jail too. So they will use the same tactics on us mentally that was used on us back in slavery time. And it worked then and it works now. But our kids are getting smarter, hopefully, and that they are not allowing abuse to have to go on for years and years and years. Thank God that the kids today, these kids today, thank God they're telling and they're not allowing this abuse to go on for years and years and years. And as parents, we have to tell our kids, you can tell. I don't care if you look and that's my best friend and I've been best friends with him or her for years and I love them dearly. If they hurt you, all bets are off. If they hurt you, all bets are off. There's no secrets. There are no secrets because we know that secrets kill. That if a child, the every day, one abuse incident can ruin a child's life. The more it happens, the worse it is for that kid. It really is. It just builds on it and builds on it and builds on it. So we have to teach our kids what happens in this house stays in this house, except if someone is hurting you, somebody is hurting you, then that needs you need to tell somebody. You have to tell somebody. You don't deserve that. And you have to tell somebody. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about with this subject, that I think that's part of also the reason why Black people don't pursue therapy. Hi, Jeanette. Black people don't pursue therapy because we've heard so many times not to tell our business. Don't tell your business to a therapist, because I've heard people say, I don't want to go to therapy because I think the therapist is, judging me or laughing at me or discussing my case, with other people, their friends and family. And in most cases, that is just not true. That is just not true. You think about your own profession, and I'm sure you don't go home and talk the details about what you've done at your job. Maybe in the beginning you're excited. It's like, woo, but after a while, it's like, nah. Hello, psychology. Great video topic. So thank you. It's like after a while, no. It is, for us as clinicians, oftentimes, because we've heard so much in the course of a day, we're not trying to go home and talk about every case or whatever. In most cases, that's not happening, which is why we have our own supervision. And that is where we can get things off our chest or process, things that we need to talk about and process in a therapeutic way, not in a way I'd be like, girl, did you hear this? And this, no. So don't let that stop you from going into therapy. But we know, yes, this is too stressful. We know it's for Black people. Some of what stops us from going into therapy is because of what we've heard or what we believed from little kids, that what happens in our houses need to stay in our houses. And that even means going to therapy, that we're not going to share our business with a stranger. And I always say, a stranger is the best person to share your business with. You ever go somewhere and you just start yapping to somebody, and next thing you know, you done told them something, and it's like, I ain't never gonna see that person again in my life. But you might have got something off your chest. So it's like the same thing with therapy. What if you feel like everything is too extreme to share to a therapist? Nothing is off limits to a therapist. Nothing. Believe me, nothing is off limits. The only way a therapist is going to take what you talked about outside the therapy room is if you say you want to hurt yourself or someone else. And then that is only to get you help. That's only to get you help, to help you be safe. But nothing is off limits. Nothing is too extreme. And hopefully, if the therapist feels like it's too extreme or they're just not capable of treating it, then hopefully they will tell you that. Like, I don't treat eating disorders. And I'm very clear about that. So if I have a client who has, and I've identified that they have an eating disorder, then I'm going to refer them to someone else. Not because I don't like the person, it's because I know that is out of the realm of what I can do to help them. And I want them to get the best help. And so I'm going to refer them to a therapist who can manage that disorder because I know I can't. So, yes, never feel like anything is too extreme for your therapist, especially if something is weighing heavy on your mind. I work with I know he's a friend. I had a friend. He was diagnosed as a sex addict, and he was definitely a sex addict, like out of control sex addict, and a very nice looking man. And so it wasn't hard for him to find sexual partners. But he would go to therapy and lie to the therapist and tell the therapist, like, nope, I haven't had sex with anybody but my girlfriend. And then he would come to me because we were friends and be like, I lied to my therapist. I don't want to tell the truth. I don't want her to be disappointed in me. I'm like, man, you're not helping yourself. You got to tell your therapist the truth so that she can help you work through this situation. Like, you having sex with any and everybody, you sticking and moving everywhere. Like, you need to tell the truth to your therapist, right? But for him, it was more, it dated back to what happens in my house stays in my house. And he didn't want to share the truth with his therapist just because he was embarrassed or he wanted the therapist to think he was doing better when he really was doing worse, that he was not doing well at all. But for most of us, even if you didn't hear that what happens in the house stays in my house, constantly growing up, there's some it's a lot of reasons why Black people said that and taught that to our children, and it dates back to slavery. And so for any I'll repeat myself, any clinicians or doctors, whoever might see this video, remember that when you're working with Black families and Black children, even though they may say my mom told me not to tell you my business or my mommy told me not to talk about that, it doesn't mean that there's abuse happening in that house. My stories are like novella soap operas or worse. And when I used to go to therapy, I felt like I had to keep a lie out. Oh no, don't do that. Nope, nope. And I think for as oftentimes therapists will know there are holes in the story. Like like for me, I know for me because I don't know, I can't remember where my cell phone, my keys are, simple stuff that I should be able to remember in my life. But I can remember the details of what a client has told me. And so if there's a hole in the story, I'm like, wait a minute, didn't you say that your uncle, you know what I mean? So hopefully, like, a therapist will be able to fill in the pieces and help you make it make sense. But nah, you got to remember what happens in the therapy room is confidential. And so you could be your freakiest, deakiest self in your therapist's office. You'll be surprised what we've heard, right? Don't feel ashamed about any of it. Speak your truth. That is the place to speak your truth, in the therapy office. And so what happens in the therapy office stays in the therapy office. Period. So you could be free to say and talk about whatever you want and not feel like too like therapy is prying into your business, right? That's the time to let it all out. That is the time to let all of it out. And some things, especially if you are talking about, intimate things, that can be difficult for some people to talk about. And that's understandable, to talk about intimate things, not freaky stuff, this crazy traumatizing stuff. Yeah, talk about it. I know when I work with, and this is so hard, this is why therapy takes so long, because for Black people, we already got this notion that what happened in the house stays in the house. I can't tell nobody. And now finally, you're in a room where somebody wants to hear all of it. Like, tell me what happened. And especially if it's been sexual abuse. So when we're working with a sexual abuse victim, survivor, part of the therapy is to get them to tell us the story, all of it. We are not by ourselves, not at all. Do victims ever suffer an entire lifetime? I wouldn't say you suffer an entire lifetime. You learn how to cope for your lifetime. You learn how to live without feeling as if you're suffering, if that makes sense, right? So it's like if you've suffered or if you've lost your parent or your mom or whatever, moms are usually the closest people to us, or your father, you you lose them. So it's that suffering that you may feel in the beginning of the grief, but then you learn how to cope with them not being there. You learn how to cope. So even if you've had trauma, and I've done a video on Black trauma, and even if you've had some trauma in your life, you learn how to live, because oftentimes the trauma was never your fault, right? So what happened to you was not your fault. And so why should you have to carry the burden of the trauma for the rest of your life? It's not fair. So you have to give yourself permission to live without the burden and the heaviness of that trauma, by learning to cope and let go and move on from it, which is why you got to speak about it. Because what happens is, because we've learned that what happens in the house stays in the house, and for Black people, we don't go into therapy, we don't get treatment, and then we do suffer. We absolutely suffer with the unhappiness, with the fear, with the intrusive thinking about the trauma. Then we use drugs or alcohol to mask the pain. And that is what has happened to us historically. That's how we deal with it. And July is National Awareness Month for mental illness and mental health for Black and Indigenous people. And that's why we are trying to get the word out to people of color, that you do not have to remain in suffering, in silence, that you can speak about whatever is happening to you: depression, anxiety, family issues, trauma, sexual abuse, which is very difficult to talk about, because as we work through any type of sexual abuse with a client, I want to hear the facts of what happened from what you remember. I want to hear about it because I want to help you to process every bit of the story. Because oftentimes kids will blame themselves and it's not their fault. And so if you tell me what you think is your fault, I can help to counteract that. So Jeanette, I had toddler trauma that I didn't understand the full story till college, and thinking, hey, this happened before, and thinking, hey, this happened before. It haunts me every day. Mm-hmm. And people in your life probably don't even know that you remember it. How do you get over it from years and years of abuse? Yes, I use alcohol, but now I'm alcohol free. Oh, thank God, Linda. Jeanette, I would say go into therapy. I would say go into therapy because if the trauma happened when you were a toddler, the people around you probably don't even realize that you realize what happened. They probably don't think you know what happened, but you do. Because if it hadn't been traumatic, you wouldn't have remembered it. I don't remember anything that happened to me when I was a toddler. But if if a traumatic incident happened, I would remember it. It's called, in psychology, we call it a flash bulb memory because it's something like a picture that somebody took of the day of the incident and they show it to you. Remember this? Remember this? Remember this? That's the intrusive thoughts, right? And so it's that flash bulb memory that in therapy, we're going to help you to dissect that. All right, let's look at it. Let's look at what happened. Because some of it, your mind will begin to tell you, well, that was your fault. That was your fault, right? I've worked with abusers and survivors. And working with abusers of, usually adult men who sexually abuse children, even in the therapy session, they are manipulative or they attempt to manipulate to make it look like they wanted to have sex with me. Are you kidding me? Yes. Why else would my girlfriend's 7-year-old daughter wear just her panties and come and sit on my lap? She wanted me to have oral sex with her. Right? So then that manipulation of that abuser, now I see what you use to keep that little girl quiet for the next 5 years. That what happens in the house stays in the house. And of course, me as a clinician, I rip him apart and dissect that thinking up one way and back down the other. What happens if your family hates you for your childhood that you couldn't help? That's because they don't want you to tell the secret. They don't want you to get better, because if you get better, then you're going to expose what happened. And then that may expose them. And they don't want that. Sometimes I always say, when I go into a family, so I get a referral and they say, oh, you're going in to see Jeanette. Jeanette's the problem. Jeanette is the problem of the family. She acting out in school. I'm just using Jeanette as an example. Jeanette is acting out in school. Go in that house and fix Jeanette. And let me tell you something. When I go in the house, I'm looking at almost everybody but Jeanette. Because I'm like, Jeanette is the one that's screaming to the world, we're sick. Help us. Help us. We need help. Right? And she's doing that by acting out. So when I go in the house, I'm interested in everybody else. Who else live in here? Excuse me, guys. Who's been around Jeanette? Who raised her? Who's been an influence in her life? That's who I'm interested in, that because those are the people that built Jeanette to where she is today. So what happened? What kind of mom did she have? What kind of father did she have? Or were they lovable? Did they embrace her? So, yeah, the problem child is usually the one that's almost the healthiest one in the family, because they had sense enough to act out to get help for the family. They say that every time. Yes. They blame me like it was my fault. Yep, because they want to keep you sick. As long as they have you to be the sick one, then nobody else has to do anything to work on themselves because you're the problem. You are the problem. And so that is the way a lot of dysfunctional families work. And they get annoyed if when I go into a house and I'm trying to talk to everybody else but the one that they sent me to talk to. Mom was like, Jeanette is in her room, or, go talk to her. Like, you ain't here for me. I'm here for everybody because everybody helped to build Jeanette to where she is today, right? Everybody. When I worked with kids who were incarcerated, and part of them going home was bringing in the family. And by the time I bring the family in, I've already built this relationship with the kid where I've broken that barrier of what happens in the house stays in the house. So now I know some things about mom that maybe she doesn't want me to know. Right? So now I have to work with her to say, it's okay that I know these things. I'm trying to help your son. You know what I mean? So, yeah, the illness and the sickness of the family, when it's an unhealthy, dysfunctional family, they live by and function by what happens in the house stays in the house because they want to continue to be unhealthy. They want to continue to live in the dysfunction because that is all they know. That's what they know. Why don't the immediate family want to accept the truth and not blame the victim? Because it's too hard. It's too hard to accept the truth because then the adults need to take some responsibility. And some things don't have a statute of limitation, So if Black families, or not just Black families, if you're covering up, let's say you have an uncle that has molested, and I've known families like this. There's this one uncle who has molested 2 generations of females in the family. But everyone loves the uncle who hasn't been molested by him. And so they don't want to see him get in trouble. And so everyone keeps the secret. Although the girls in the family are all falling apart, acting out, doing drugs, whatever. They're just dysfunctional. And everyone is covering up because they don't want to see the uncle go to jail. So then it's that mentality of what happens in the house stays in the house. I think Oprah even talked about this. The cousin or the uncle that molested her growing up when she was a toddler, not a toddler, she was older, like 4 or 5 years old. And everyone in the family kept it secret. And they knew what he had done to her and probably other females in the family, but they kept it a secret. So it's that mentality of what happens in the house stays in the house. They want to pretend like nothing has happened and just carry on, like suck it up and too bad. Absolutely. Absolutely, families will say that to each other. Let it go. It's over. It happened. You were a kid. Absolutely. But it's never too late to deal with your trauma, because if you don't deal with trauma, trauma will deal with you. And it will deal with you through drugs, alcohol, having poor relationships, not only with a spouse, but with your own children. So deal with your trauma. If something has happened in your house growing up or even now, many women who are being physically abused are not exposing that. They are living with the abuse. They're living with being smacked and punched, kicked, tortured, sexually abused, even by their own husband or partner. And they're not exposing it and telling it because they don't want it to be out that this is happening to them. And this is from poor to wealthy women, from poor to wealthy. I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with like from the Amigos, Quavo and Sweetie. And if you looked at them from the outside, I mean, he buying her jets and she got the latest Birkin bag and she's a beautiful girl. He's a handsome guy. They live in real nice. They are doing it. And then we see a video of them beating the hell out of each other in a elevator. You know, same thing with Beyonce and Jay-Z. When Solange attacked Jay-Z in that elevator, what happens in the house stays in the house, got out because of the camera in those elevators, caught it, and then whoever security was leaked it. But had we not seen that on camera, we would have never known that it was that type of situation going on with these families. I never got justice from the system because of the statue, but God took him off this earth a few years back. Thank God. How do you make your partner accept I'm sorry. How do you make your parents accept the neglect? You can't. You cannot make anybody accept anything. You really can't. You can't. You got to work on you. I always tell people you got to work on yourself. I know when I've worked with, like going back to working with kids that have been incarcerated, and I tell them like, I've worked on you for 2 years in this place, and I think I got some good results. You've made some changes, but guess what? When you go home, everybody gonna still be acting the same way that they were acting before you got locked up. And when you come home, they're gonna expect you to be the same, but you're gonna be different. You're gonna think different. You're gonna walk different. You're gonna talk different. How are you going to be able to manage that when mama and daddy and sister and cousins are all doing the same unhealthy, dysfunctional behaviors? And some of those kids were able to rise above it, and some of them returned back to the facility within 6 months. Let me see. Linda says, I was traumatized and carried it for 20 years, but once I went to counseling, I'm so much better. It took some years, but I'm thankful. Oh gosh, thank God. And you were traumatized at work? Oh wow. Okay. Yes. It takes counseling. I believe that. This article that I was reading, oftentimes for Black people too, before we had access to counseling, we went to church and we talked to our pastor. And even to this day, I mean, I've gone, with raising my kids, 5 years ago when they were teenagers, and, they getting on my nerves or something, and I'll go to my pastor. I'm like, could you talk to my son? Even though my husband is here or whatever, sometimes kids need to hear it from somebody else. And although I didn't put, my son in counseling, I did go to the pastor and was like, could you talk to him? Because this happened. And luckily for me, the pastor is also a therapist. He was working on his master or something. So anyway, but he had experience in counseling. And, so I felt confident that he would be able to talk to my son and work with my son. And he did. So we, as Black people, oftentimes we'll go to our pastors. And thank God a lot of our pastors now in Black churches do have that background or education in counseling. Let me go back to the chat. Linda was traumatized at work. Oh my God. Jeanette, yeah, the guy got a tumor on the back of his leg and died. So Jeanette, that even tells me the fact that you know that much about this man that hurt you. Was he still in your family? Like he was still kind of around that you even knew like how he died and that he was sick, which makes your trauma even worse, especially if you still needed to, if you still had contact with this man, which happens to a lot of victims. Yes, law enforcement, about 6 or 7 years ago, after you told, and believe me, Jeanette, you were not his only victim. I've never met a perp that only had one victim. Never met a perp who had only had, it was your uncle, yeah. So this is somebody that was still in your family that over the years you were at barbecues with, you were at different events with. Yeah. My parents left us every summer in their care for years. Oh God. Oh my goodness. Yep. So that was your mom's brother or your dad's brother. Believe me, you were not his only victim. You were not his only victim. If there were any other kids around, and oftentimes it goes through generations. It will go through generations. Yep, generational abuse. Yep, and you don't fully realize it until you're grown experiencing things. Yep, my aunt's husband. Okay, so a non-blood relative, but yes. Yep, your aunt's husband. So you're like your mom's sister's husband. Okay. They said, oh, well, it happened to him when he was a kid. Oh, wow. Wow. Mm-hmm. The family secrets. Secrets kill. Family secrets and how they kill us. About 4 or 5 cousins said they were 2 years and years after. They said, oh, well, okay, wait. About 4 or 5 cousins said they were too. Oh, absolutely. Never just one victim. Never just one victim. That's what we tell law enforcement. If you find one victim, where you find one victim, you're going to find 2 more, 3 more, 10 more. I'm reading an article now in People magazine. I don't know why I get People magazine. I don't know. My daughter said she didn't order them, but I get these People magazines. There's a good article in one of them that I'm reading about a girl that was kidnapped, and turns out they found her body 3 years later, but it was from a known kidnapper and rape guy who was doing this to children. And decades later, like they're still piecing together some of his victims. And he died. He's dead. But there's still victims or people that kids, girls that have gone missing in that area and linked back to him. Older ladies from decades before me. My God. My goodness. It's never just one victim, ever. Not that that makes you feel any better, but as a molester, they get better with time. They learn how to talk to the victims, how to manipulate, how to groom. And remember, if you come from that family that says what happens in the house stays in the house, then you're not going to go and tell your teacher or your guidance counselor or whoever that something is happening to you. Because even though your mom said that to you, it wasn't necessarily about abuse. She just said, don't tell my business. And so that is why you keep the secret. You also keep the secret. And for what a lot of victims have said to me, and what I've learned, is the embarrassment of exposing what the details are of what happened. Exposing the details of what happened is so violating and hurts so bad that you don't want to tell somebody the details of what happened. But in order to heal from it, we have to talk about it and put it out there. You were the last one. My own family hates me for the abuse, my nuclear family, not others. Wow. Because you were the bravest one to say, look, this happened to me and this is effed up. And he did it. And I want y'all to do something. Somebody do something about it. That's why they hate you, because everyone else stayed quiet. Everyone else accepted what happens in the house stays in the house. They accepted it. But trust me, they are it's going to show itself. Them other cousins, it's going to show itself. Even through their own children, it's going to show itself. That trauma is going to erupt if it's not dealt with. It's definitely going to erupt. And not saying that they're going to molest their children, because most people who were molested do not molest other people. That's not true. Yes, everyone else stayed quiet. I just had the courage one day to tell the police. Thank God. Thank God you did. I know when I work with kids, oh my goodness. That's probably the one thing I want to know. Like, what stopped you? Oh my God, what stopped you? Thank God, Jeanette, you spoke on it. You spoke on it. But that man left a lot of hurt, trauma, and pain within the foundation of your family when he entered into the family. He really did. He really did. And even though you may not know it, you're going to help other people that was hurt by him, because by you exposing it, it's going to say, this, like, it's saying like this was wrong, because even though they're holding that secret, it is affecting them in a negative way. Absolutely is. Absolutely is. I didn't understand the death till I was experiencing things in college, and that's when I spoke out. That makes sense. Because we had that, because as a kid, and it's another thing about being a child, you're very powerless. You are powerless. And as Black families, we put that in our kids' head too. This is my house. You're going to do what I say in my house. If you don't like it, you can leave. I've said that. I've said that to my kids, and I hate it, because my parents never said that to me. I don't know where I get that shit from, the fact that I've even said it. But it really gives kids that sense of powerlessness. Like, this is my house, but I can't tell nothing that's going on in the house. And is it really my house? Because as soon as they get pissed, they tell me I can get out. This they house, not your house. I don't know if that's something that we as Black people do, but I know that's kind of something that is a thread within our community. I didn't understand the death till I was okay. I never had boyfriends like that in middle school or high school to know, hey, what's something wrong, until I was an adult. Well, it's never too late. It's never too late, Jeanette. And you understand that what happened to you was wrong. Period. What happened to you was wrong. But what makes it even worse and like I said, most kids are molested by a friend or a family member. Stranger danger is true, but in most cases, the molester is going to be right in the circle. He's going to be a friend of your father, of your mother, your uncle, your auntie's husband or new boyfriend. He's ingrained himself and trusted himself within the family, which is why, now this is one thing I know we do, and as Black people, one thing I know that we, and I've heard this from many, I don't know about some of y'all new mothers, but not allowing your little girls to sit on a man's lap. Not allowing, I know that's something I grew up. I wasn't allowed to sit on nobody's lap. I know I'm late, so I will watch the replay. Okay, see, um, I wasn't. I didn't. I don't even think my mom played sitting on my dad's lap. You don't sit on no man's lap. Period. Even within my family, if I see, well, I don't see it because I think we don't ingrain that so bad in our kids and my little nieces and nephews and great nieces and nephews. Like, you don't sit on no man's lap. You never sit on a male's lap. Like, and when I see other families and they don't have that rule, and I'm like, we just weren't allowed to do that. But and I think that's one of those family rules, and that rule kind of came about because there might have been an uncle or somebody that we knew. How we phrase it in Black community is that Uncle Johnny is nasty. Uncle Johnny is nasty. So you don't sit on his lap. You don't go in the front room with just you and Uncle Johnny. You don't go out in the garage with just you and Uncle Johnny because he nasty. Okay, that really translates. Johnny's got a history of molesting the females in the family. But you don't talk about it. You don't tell nobody, but you protect yourself by not sitting on his lap or no other man's lap. Right? So that's the underlining, like the secret. This is how we're going to hold this secret. But at the same time, we're going to protect Johnny because he's Big Mama's baby son. So we got to protect him. And it's time to get away from that thinking. We got to get away from that for the sake of our children. It came for me from all the interviews I did. My daughter was told as an infant, absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. I don't do that. I don't do that. I don't even want my boys sitting and playing on nobody's lap. No. Mm-mm. Mm-mm. Nope, 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 nope. Nope. That is, and I've heard too many men who were already arrested for being, raping, molested children say, well, she sat on my lap and I got hard. So she knew I was hard. She was 4 years old. She was 8 years old. What she know about you, So no. Nope, 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 nope. But then that goes back to what happens in the house stays in the house, especially if what has happened in the house is so devastating and embarrassing, and then children hold that secret even longer. And not only children, so do adult women who are in abusive relationships and not exposing that they're in these abusive relationships. You don't know it until maybe they've had enough and they leave, or they have a visible black eye or something. And then it's like, oh man, I didn't know, he was doing that to you. I didn't know that was happening. So, yes. So that was, thank you everybody. Well, this one is, hold on, let me see, Jeanette, I don't see yours. All right. Then why do they say molest when it's rape? I don't believe it stops at molestation with dirty, sick abusers. They go the whole way. They do. It's rape. It's absolutely rape. It's rape. I know if I read an article Or if I'm watching the news and they'll say, oh, 9-year-old girl molested by a 52-year-old man. I will email that news station so fast. She was raped. They'll say sexually abused, or, that it was an act of sex or whatever. And I'm like, no, 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 no. That was rape. That was rape, period. Why do they say molest when it doesn't, when don't stop there? It's rape. I agree with that. Molest almost makes it like we can almost deal with that, other than the word rape. For some reason, news people don't like to say the word rape when it comes to children. And what's worse, if they say 18, no, 24-year-old man has sex with 11-year-old girl. Oh, I lose my shit. I'm on the phone. I'm trying to call. I'm sending emails. Oh, you gonna change that. That 24-year-old man raped that 11-year-old girl. He raped her because it's a child. Okay. Why do they have the law about the statute of limitations? That's something I know that it's been increased, but that's something that they are definitely still working on that. It's when psychology and the law have to come together and agree that we know victims don't necessarily tell about what has happened to them, and they can keep that secret for 20 years. And their abuser could still be alive. And in most cases, if he's alive, he's abusing other people. So that is why they're trying to get that expanded. Like, we should be able to tell our truth when we tell our truth. But I'm hoping that through social media and just our kids being smarter than they were, as far as understanding that your molester is not going to have your family killed, or understanding that you can tell what happened, like that kids are going to be smarter and stronger and be able to tell us what happened. And parents are going to be stronger and smarter. And women are not going to, they're going to teach their daughters not to sit on a man's lap or not allow someone to touch them inappropriately. And they're going to teach their daughters and their sons that what happens in the house stays in the house, except if somebody is hurting you. That don't stay in the house. Oh, no, it's no statute in Michigan. See, it's always state by state. Always state by state. Depends on the state, right? It depends on the state. It shouldn't be, because we know that it could take a very long time before someone will tell their story. I work with a lot of women who are prostitutes. I've worked with a lot of women who are prostitutes, and often I'm going to say 85 to 90% of them have gone through some sort of sexual abuse. They have gone through some sort of sexual abuse in their childhood. They have experienced some kind of sexual abuse. Most definitely. So it's not funny, but it's odd to me how, that the rape, the sex act that happened to them, that was horrible, and now they are in the business of selling sex. Oh, excuse me, oftentimes because they are on some sort of drugs, and they need to support that habit. And now they're back in this position where they are selling sex to escape the very thing that got them in the position that they're in, because they've learned to like separate that. It's like it's like they can have a split in their brain, like, okay, I'm doing this sex act to meet this need. And very low self-esteem. Absolutely. When you go through something like that, it kills your self-esteem. It absolutely kills your self-esteem. And for boys, and I've worked with boys who have been molested by a male, and it is different. It's not different. It's the same. It's the same trauma. It's trauma. If they've been molested by a male or by a female, it's trauma. It kills your spirit. Yeah, it does. But you can rebuild your spirit back. You can. No problem, Jeanette. Thank you for sharing with us. I know your story is going to help somebody. It's going to help somebody to tell their truth, to not live by what happens in the house, stays in the house, and let it go. Tell your truth. Tell your truth. Well, that's it. Linda, I'm about to end it. I'm about to say my famous ending. That's it. That's all. Thank you, guys. And look for my next live. I don't know what my subject is going to be. It'll come to me today, sometime tonight. What time is it? Oh, yeah, I'll get it. And once I know, that's it. That's all. Once I know my next topic, I will post it and set up the live. And you guys check on me either tomorrow or Monday. Maybe tomorrow, probably tomorrow. Why not? I'm trying to do every night in July, 9 p.m., a new live. Thank you, Linda. A new live discussing mental health in the Black community. It is July Mental Health Awareness Month for Black and Indigenous people. Brought to you by BB Campbell's Foundation. Thank you. And I will see you at my next live.